He's the latest sensation from Australia, Guru Glenn Cooper, and he's changing lives with a brand new fishing show.
Fishing Guru Glenn Cooper.
This is Guru Glen. We're on our first road trip. We're going up the Bemm River. Although, you know, like as Keith saying, this is all land-based, we've actually got a little boat that we're taking with us as well. But predominantly we're going up there to do land-based fishing for bream, flathead, perch from what I've been told. I know it's myself, Guru Glen. We got Past Eddie who's driving and the captain for the boat. And like I said, we're going to have a ball. So we're all going up there. We're leaving now from Mornington. It's at 9:30, and hopefully we'll get up there around about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. So I'll see you up there. Hi, we've arrived at Bemm River. This is fantastic. Hey, I've just walked into the local hotel and this is great. Look at the stuff, kind of fish they actually catch here. That's a luderick, and it says up there 5 pounds. How much is the old scale? 5 pounds. I can't convert that into kilos now, but it looks good. But you know, if you look at some of these fish, here we are here.
Yeah, give them about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Yellowfin bream, 4 pound, 4 ounces. So, you know, it's a shame we can't get flathead like this up in Melbourne. But this is great, isn't it? That's absolutely brilliant. But I'm going to catch a flathead that big this while I'm here. Oh, there goes one of the locals past our head. And also, look at that estuary perch. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
You've got them already.
Huh?
You've got them.
Well, we might move. If they're all like that, just keep taking bait. Look at this. What? Oh, beautiful bream.
Yeah,
Look at that.
yeah.
Look at that. What a lovely bream. Look at this. And this is what we've come here for.
Hang on.
Look at that. What a beautiful looking bream. Oh, what a lovely, lovely catch.
Then some marks.
What? Now that's a nice sized bream. That's, as I said, it's from the snapper family. Now that's a good sized bream.
But you got a new boom?
That was caught on prawn, running a paternoster rig. And I'm using a size 2 circle hook. Now that's a nice fish. Very, very nice fish. Hey, how are you? Guru Glen here, we're at Bemm River. And we're going to be here for a few days. And here we are, this beautiful, picturesque scenes and everything like that. We're trying for a bream, of course. And I'm basically going to try one style. And my cohort is going to try another style. I'm actually using a paternoster, and he's going to use a running sinker. And I'm hoping that we can get some bream. But look at this beautiful scenery. And this is what land-based is all about. It's actually coming and enjoying fishing in great sceneries and knowing that we can actually do and enjoy ourselves without a boat. This is what it's all about. Fishing is not just to throw a line in, it's to relax and enjoy yourselves. At the moment I've got in at the moment, I've got a bit of prawn, we're after bream. Had a couple of little bites. Nothing at the moment, but if we're getting little bites, that means there's a couple of big ones around as well. And fishing's all about just enjoying your surroundings, your friends, and just sitting back, relaxing. Look, I'm not in no $35,000 boat. I'm sat here relaxed, enjoying it. Beautiful scenery around me. And I know I'm getting bites, just like anyone else does. Well, I'm just going to hope the thing takes a minute. But I'm getting little nibbles. And this is a good place to bring a family, right? Your friends, and just enjoy it. Doesn't seem like a very big one, but it's a nice fish. Oh, nice fish. Nice fish. Nice luderick. Yeah. This is, we just caught ourselves a nice little luderick. So, that was caught on worms. She's a little bit spiky, but a nice little fish. She's just legal, 23 centimetres, but a nice fish. That's what it's all about. Nice little lake. You can tell a luderick, you know, like I know down the beaches and that, with luderick, some people catch these fishes and they've only got about 7 stripes. Ludricks have got 8 stripes on them, which are a very good fish. We're still at Bemm River, but before I come down here, I've done some research and trying to find out a little bit about Bemm River. And I thought the easiest way to do it was through the internet, because that's a great tool these days. So I looked up on the internet and I saw that there was an angling club down here. And I found out who the president was, who was the father of the son that owns the general store here, and spoke to him, and he introduced or organised me meeting Don. And I'm going to have a bit of a talk to Don, and so he can tell us a little bit about Bemm River itself and what it's all about. This is Don. Hello Don, how are you?
Very good to meet you.
Mate, it was actually good to find you. Mate, they tell me that you're an icon. You've been fishing these areas and knows these areas for many years.
Well, 1949, I go back to then. So,
I wasn't even born then.
That's a good while, and it was a place I loved. I come here 10-year-old and just loved it. It rained for 3 days. That was my first trip.
That sounds like the place here. When we come here, it rained for 3 days.
So I have some feeling for guys that leave the day the sun shines and they've been here for those 3 days where it's just poured rain or blowing. The wind's pretty bad here.
I found that out. I actually found that out myself how bad it is, especially when you're out in a little tinny.
So February 1949, I stayed here with my dad, and the pub was a bit different then, but it was famous even back in 49. Laurie Gurney, who did the famous wartime cartoon of Louie and Curly, used to stay here and did a couple of classic cartoons of what was known then as the most famous of all publicans, and that was the Morgans. I'll just have to give me a minute to think of his name. It wasn't Dolly. But anyway, he was famous for being very lazy. And so,
no wonder you can be lazy in a place like this.
And you had to have the change. Or you had to put the glass under the Pluto. And Laurie Gurney picked this up and he made quite good cartoons about it. So the thing I remember most about the picket fence had a great big whoop in it. And every Sunday morning he used to come out and lean against the fence on the chair and lean against the fence. Well, when I come there, the fence had bent over that bad that he actually turned the chair around and leant on the... So that was his Sunday morning, and he'd soak up the sun for some hours. But look, notwithstanding, his mother started the Bemm River pub back in 1927. So it's a long time ago, and they had the farm. They'd come out from Orbost and had this idea of a guest house. Built a pub down at where the farmhouse is today. It burnt down, never pulled a beer. And they'd already selected 3 blocks of land here, so that's an acre and a half here, and they built a pub here where they then operated as like a guest house, but it had a bar and grew on from there. So to come to Bemm back in the 30s, if we can move forward to that, you were fairly affluent, and you could afford the guest house, either the train to get here, the pub used to go in and get them and bring them out, and their fishing was localised here, of course, and so there were all sorts of things that happened. They had dinner bells. This is all sorts of things that happened. They'd ring a bell in the morning if you wanted to get out early. So one bell meant that breakfast was ready. 2 bells, it was on the table. 3 bells, you're too late. But I'd say it went on for like that, and the war came, and I suspect if you wanted to nail Bemm after the war, it became a haven for war-torn. Look, they were Air Force men, they were soldiers, they were sailors, and with their mates they come and had a bit of leisure time here at Bemm River and reorganised their lives, and I got to know some of them in the 70s and 80s when we first come here regularly, and you know, to hear their stories of what they did was just made you realise how special Bemm River was for those sort of guys.
Even today the word gets around that the bream fishing up here is brilliant. Right? Oh, I've only caught one since I've been here because the weather's was terrible. Yesterday was great, but yeah, as he said, the winds sometimes are actually howling through here, so it's a bit hard to do some fishing. But there's some great fishing spots here. Now, you being the president of the Angling Club, you'll know all about where all the good fishing spots here, don't you?
Well, I should do, and I always try and look at fishing on the basis of doing it right. So the fishing spots is not as critical for me as getting it right, because if you're not getting it right, it doesn't matter if you're on the hottest spot out, you'll not succeed. So I had to learn the hard way. A little personal story from me. On my 21st birthday, Mum wanted a party. Back then, it was just parties were just starting to come in. Everyone had to have a 21st. So I said, no, I'm going to Bemm River. And I come up here for 4 wonderful days, and typically I never caught a fish. And I used to see these old guys, sugar bags, they were the go those days. You put your fish in a sugar bag. So you'd see these old guys, the old long jetty there walking down. They could hardly carry their sugar bag, and I'd be a couple of times hired a boat, couldn't catch a fish. And this guy, I caught up to him one night. He was around, it used to be the old post office, and I'd seen him in a little flat tin boat, about 10 foot long it was, and he was just poling his way around out in the shallows. And I said, how you going? And I said, you doing any good out there? He didn't waste words. He took me over, and he had 3 or 4 really good bream, and a couple of them they'd have been 3 pounders. And I said, I'd die with a smile on my face. I said, if I could catch a couple like that. And he said, I'll tell you something, son. He said, I've never forgotten it. The fish are big, the water's shallow, and they're smart. And it's something I think we could all remember, because at the end of the day, they don't get that big by being dumb. And what it proved to me was that I was pretty dumb.
Yeah, I found out that myself this week.
So I started to realise that there's a difference between just dangling a line out and angling. And so it was a bit of a shock to me, because I'd lived on the Tambo, I'd caught bream all my life. I thought I knew a bit about bream, but I absolutely knew nothing about bream at Bemm River. So I had to then realise that they're smart and the water's shallow, and it gets back to that. There's not many places for them to hide out there, so you can do a lot of things wrong to spook them. They're very easily spooked. And so for a lot of people, by the time they've got their lines baited up and they're throwing it out, they're not going to get a fish because the message is out. There's a lot of activity here, and they turn off. But notwithstanding, somebody 100 metres away could be bagging out and you're not getting a fish. So that's the question that I always ask the people. You know, and I like to, if I'm going to help them, I'll say, look, let's have a look at your rod. And it starts, for me, it starts with the rod. It doesn't matter where you're fishing. If your rod is inappropriate, you're not going to catch fish. So, and at Bemm River. So you can have quite a good rod. I don't say there's bad rods, but there's rods that aren't appropriate. So you want a good soft action rod. Preferably have a couple of rods that are different, because it's so critical that one rod might catch fish one day or one trip, and then 12 months later it mightn't get a bite, but another rod will. So vary the sort of rods you've got. You've got fast action rods, slow rods, and the old Black Queen was the classic old brim rod. Everyone that was anyone had a Black Queen and a Mitchell reel.
And a Mitchell, yep.
So it goes from there, and the little things that I'd like to point out to anyone who wants to listen is the put the rod down, back the clutch off, and just let the rod do the work. You know, you've spent a fair bit of money on that rod and reel, and you're holding it, and I often say to people, if you think you can feel a fish, well, I think he can feel you too. So it's a bit of a two-way thing. And it's good to talk about fishing when it's tough. And they get tough here where it's almost impossible to catch them. But at times when they're tough, there's still people catching fish. But the average angler who just hasn't dotted all those I's and crossed those T's is struggling. So the quicker you get those things right, the more successful you'll be.
Yeah, oh, look, I've learnt myself even just being here, you know, like even a noise of a chain going into the water can actually spook off fish, which I'm going to put my hand up on. You know, fishing Port Phillip Bay and fishing a little shallow inlet like here is two different things, completely different things. And I learnt that here. And like I said, I've been fishing myself for about 47 years now. Maybe a little bit longer, you know, since I was a kid. You know, I'm still young. I'm only 57, so
you got a bit to go.
Still got a bit to go to catch up on you. But the thing about it is what I've seen about Bemm River, and what I've heard about Bemm River, is that people come back here year after year after year, and not just in one or two people, but in groups. There's many groups that actually come down here and fish in Bemm River.
Look, it's a special place for the people that it appeals to. I was gone that first night here as a kid, and I still see it today where a 10-year-old will come and say, oh gee, I slept well last night. Now he wouldn't know what he's talking about, but he's telling you that he's the kid that'll keep coming back. They don't all come back. Some of the famous family names that I know of that have, you know, back those days had big families, there might only be one or two of those kids will come back. Sometimes it's a young boy, and often it's a girl. And so that tells me that there's a feel you get at this place that you don't get somewhere else. I've searched my soul to try and nail it so that I could say to somebody, well, this is why. But I don't think there is a reason. I think it's something that's in the air that you feel. And if you get that link, it's something that's very real, and those people will be like myself. I brought my mum and dad here and my two children, and people say, why do you go to Bemm River? Well, that's I don't want to answer it too much, because it's so special that not everyone can, you know, enjoy the sort of things that I do. Whether it's an adventure still for me, or whether it's because it's just simply the fish, well, I don't believe that, because I can still go out there and not catch a fish and still have a good day. I've caught my fish. If somebody wants to know about how many fish I've caught, it's a lot. But it's probably less now than when I was working flat out and like a lot of people retire, you know, they catch less fish because you don't get it. You're not as good as you used to be either. You know, as you get older, your effectiveness drops off. So I'm in that mode, and I've changed. I do a lot of lure fishing now, which I love. Again, I can go out and not catch a fish and still enjoy it. But when I get a couple, maybe I might get 7 or 8. And I look at it and I think, how in the hell does that bit of metal or plastic catch a fish? I think it's a fair question, you know. And at the end of the day, there's no answer. All you can say is it works.
It works, that's right. But like I said, you know, like so many people come back to Bemm River. There's even, I've just noticed there's a couple of blokes over here that have been coming down here for about 20 odd years, and they just keep coming back and back. And I had the pleasure of actually talking to these gentlemen over there, and they've been coming here for over 20 years, every year at the same time. Why? Because Bemm River is a place to come and enjoy yourself. Just need the net. Where's the net?
Watch me stubby down there.
What do you think you've got, Matt?
Big rim.
It's a brim, is it?
Not a very big one.
Huh?
Not a keeper, only a little.
You got a bite on this one too, have you?
No, my cross
yeah.
lines. Yeah. Yeah, cross lines.
Across the line. You're right.
Non-keeper.
Non-keeper.
Yep.
Nice healthy one.
Yeah, they're all good fish around here.
And it swallowed your hook completely.
Yep.
So it's a cut off.
Yep. Knife. See you, mate.
So the size of a brim is what, still 28?
We go, yeah, 28.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if there's plentiful, we usually normally go 30.
30, yeah.
Just keep it.
Because are they like snapper, where they don't start breeding under about 30 centimetres?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that should be a
Only tiddler.
Is it? Don't need the net?
No story.
Good one. And another little one. Baby. You talked about some of the old stuff. Now, what I'd like to know now is just some of the modern day fishing that you call. What do you call modern day fishing?
Well,
here?
that's right. We're all old enough, and particularly I'm old enough to have gone through all these, from the old bamboo rods with the old centre pin reel. We pull the line down onto a bag.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I don't remember those.
I can still do that, but
I'm
then
not that old.
We got the modern day reels, which have just gone. They're better and better. You just can't believe some of these reels now. You'll never wear them out. So that's been an amazing transition, and matching that's been the quality of the rods. You go from bamboos with the solid glass rods, and then you've got your hollow glass rods, which are today still up there, and you've got your carbon fibre, obviously. But matching all that has been better lines, where our monos now are so much finer for their breaking strain, because the basic essence of the issues that I see for anglers are line diameter. That's one thing. If you're bait fishing, line diameter is critical, as is your sinker in it being locked up or free running.
Explain a little bit what you mean by diameter, line diameter.
Yes, I've been at the end of where people are not catching fish, and I've said to them, look, let's have a look at your rods. And they've come all that way often from Melbourne, and they've got a bay rod with 20-pound line. And back in the early 80s, 20-pound line was 30.36. Whether you like it or not, that's pretty heavy line. Now, in my view, I'm not going to offer any bait on a line thicker than 0.28. And most of the lines I use today in mono are 0.24.
Right.
0.20. So there's a feel factor there, because I often say, how does a brim know that it's too thick? Well, I say he picks it up and he feels it.
Right.
See, it's a bit hard to imagine this, isn't it? But the other classic is brim fishing with a running sinker. Now, I know you caught a fish with a paternoster the other day, so I don't want to get into holes here, but many times I've seen people, once I've looked at their rod, they've got a sinker that's locked up. It's either had a loop tied on it, it's not sitting on a swivel or a match, which I use, and it's locked up. So I say to anyone, I say, well, what does the fish do? Does he go and look at where the sinker is and say, nah, it's locked up? No, he picks the bait up, he feels it, he feels the resistance of the locked up sinker, spits it out and swims away. So I always say to people, if you can believe that, same applies with too thick a line. If you can believe that he actually picks it up, he feels the thickness of the line, and he spits it out, and I happen to believe that, I say, that, what else does he feel? And that pushes me down this track of feel. What else does he feel? Now, we're not talking about fishing when they're biting their heads off and everyone's catching fish. I'm talking about it when it's getting tough. Things matter. Do one thing wrong, you don't get a fish or you don't get a bite. So what have you got to do? There's all these things that come into play. So that's where the big improvements have been. Fineness of line. You can fish lighter sinkers. You can still cast good distance. Everything works as long as you follow those little steps down the track. I've seen guys with a big swivel, even a snap swivel, and I've been able to say to somebody, look, your line's right, your hook size is right, your sinker's right, let's get rid of this snap swivel, put a little swivel on. They've come back that afternoon, smiles, caught fish. So it's simple things.
So you're basically saying that when you're actually fishing, it's going to be to the fish, things, especially brim, because they're such a very
especially brim,
right? That it's going to be more so to them. It has to be almost natural. Like if a prawn swimming past, you don't have line on a prawn, do you?
No.
Well, if a live prawn goes
Exactly.
past, he's out there to attack it and eat it, isn't he? Right? Or they're digging up the thing trying to get those
That's
sandworms.
Yeah, look, a brim is a scavenger. We shouldn't forget this. So a dead 2-day-old prawn sometimes catches the best fish because he loves something a bit. He's like a dog, a bit smelly.
A bit like a snapper.
Well, there you
they're
go.
in the snapper family.
I've heard people say that.
Yeah, I've heard people catch snapper.
And some of the things I talk about, blokes that have been listening to me said, well, that's what we do down at the bay. As in letting the fish run.
Yes.
I back my clutch off, and so if he pulls a bit, he'll get line.
Yep.
And so I'm quite happy to let him have a couple of goes of it. And one of the best advice I can give to anyone, as a start, when you've got your bite, leave the rod alone, let him have a go, he'll commit. You pick it up too soon, that's what he's looking for, some reason to spit it, and he'll just spit it, and he won't come back.
Yep.
That fish, you'll never get him. He'll go, he might be caught by somebody else tomorrow, but that's it for the time you're there.
So it's very, very important to your thickness of line, which
Yes.
actually, the thinner the line, the better.
The better.
So back in our terms now, we're actually not talking about, like we're talking about 4 pound line sort of thing.
We're look at most of the modern day lines that are 8 to 10 pound are still under 24, 26 millimetres or
Yep.
inches. So that's still a good weight. You'll land almost any fish on that sort of
No, it's not.
weight.
8 kilo snapper being caught on those,
Well, that's
those
right.
lines,
Exactly.
So they bring. So like I said here, everything has got to be catching a brim, but even catching a perch or a ludwig or something like that. Everything has to stay as normal as possible, doesn't it?
It does.
To them.
As natural as you can present.
That's right.
And it's all about, I think, as a part of the skill of mastering what happens here, those things follow a sequence of things you do. So get your gear right, and then locating yourself. I like to fish onto water that I haven't travelled over. So these are little things that most days is wind. Come onto your mark downwind, anchor up so that you're not yawing. That's pretty important. In the old days they used poles, you know. You mightn't have seen that.
No, I've actually been watching them use poles out here now.
I give up using poles. They're pretty heavy and hurt my back. Not very safe either at my age. So I just use an anchor and a weight. But
when you mean a weight, you mean
just a
Solid block.
Yeah,
Like
block.
a mick.
I've got a
Bit of
couple
cotton
of different weights. A 5 litre ice cream bucket full of concrete's adequate.
Oh right.
Put an eye in that, so that's easy done. And as far as I'm concerned, that's how I do it now, and I don't think it's as good as the poles, but you must remember that even in the 30s and 40s, it was important to be as stable as you could make. So in other words, you didn't want the rod bowing like that and loose line everywhere. There's a key here that tells me you do need some tension on your rod. Now there are other ways, and I want to talk about that, but for me, up until the last 4 or 5 years, I'm always, in my presentation, I've got a small amount of tension.
Oh right. Yep. Fair enough.
And so that's been working for me. Now in recent years, and particularly in the last 12 months, I've seen quite a noticeable change where you can slack line, have a longer leader beyond your stopper. I've seen where the old means that I'm going about where there's a bit of tension, they don't like that. They like the freedom of being able to pick it up and take it. And I'm saying they're only taking it maybe that far, but they're happy to do that. And if there's no give in it at all, they won't take it. They won't come back. So that's a big change. And I believe this because I've seen it. I've been with guys that are doing things differently to what I do, and they're catching fish, and in some cases catching more fish than I'm catching. So I believe it, and I think that's the modern trend with the tackle we're using. It's changed the way fish are behaving.
So that means no matter how old you are, you can still learn something new. So
Exactly.
this is fantastic for me right at this moment because there's stuff here that I use these techniques when I'm going snapper bashing, as we call it in Port Phillip Bay.
Yep.
But like I've not, as I said, I've not really been a bream fisherman or like an estuary fisherman or a river fisherman. These are all new little techniques that I'm actually learning from you at this moment.
Well, now the other thing we ought to mention, because a lot of people now are moving forward into braid, which I believe works well maybe on the beach, maybe for snapper, I'm not sure.
No.
But the jury's out possibly, but to a large degree for me, I couldn't encourage anyone to use braid bait fishing for bream.
Fair enough.
When it first came out, I geared a rod up with it, and I felt I had to have a lot of advantages. I was going to cast it much further, and I could set up, I thought, a lot better, and I found I didn't get the bites at all, and if I did, it was a little fish if I caught him. And the big thing was that the rod absolutely went ballistic every time he got a bite. So I, right through until now, have been saying to anyone, be sure that you have a couple of spools. You can see a lot reel today. You can buy 2 spools. Have a bit of mono on one and have a bit of braid on the other. Don't just think because you've gone to braid. I've had people that have been quite pleased with. They've finally gone up to the new and they've taken a massive step backwards.
Yeah.
So you've got to understand that. But in saying that, I'm using braid for my lure fishing, so we can talk about that with a good length of mono at the end. And if anyone wants to start off lure fishing, Bemm River's a wonderful estuary to try. It's a good open water. You can just drift. You side onto the breeze, so you're casting downwind all the time, which makes it easier to cast. You're getting good distance. If there's 3 or 4 in the boat, you can all do it safely. And you've seen it on telly, so you know roughly what to do, and that's what was my thing. I had to start, and I loved it doing it because of the water. I felt I'm covering more water. it must give me better opportunities because I'm covering that much more water. And I think it does, but what you do learn is you drift onto fish, you drift off fish. You might catch 2 fish, 3 fish, and then you get none. So it tells you that they are in schools, and these are all the things we talked about all our lives, but it's true.
Yep, I agree with you.
And we've got no way of knowing unless you do something like that.
I'll tell you what, you know, like getting knowledge of fishing is always great to talk to people like Don. You know, like hunt them down because there's so much you can learn from, you know, like people that have been fishing all their lives. You know, mature men. You know, like mature fishermen, right? Knowledge. You can never have enough knowledge or enough.
Yeah, that's right. You can't. And every place you go to has their own idiosyncrasies, and Bemm's got more than most. Believe me. So, and I think to a certain extent, when you come, if you were to drive into Bemm and just drive and do maybe a couple of streets and down towards the river and up to the beach, you'd say, well, what's here? And most people do that, drive out. So you've got to have an inquiring mind, you've got to want to learn, and to do that sometimes you've got to take a few hidings. You don't catch fish, you see these other people with fish, why aren't I catching fish?
Yep.
And if you can get through all that, you'll succeed at Bemm River because you'll talk to people, you'll listen to what they say. No one's got a recipe whereby it's going to work for everyone because we all compromise maybe what you've been told and do our own thing our own way, and I think that's wonderful. I always say to people, what I say is a pointer towards you being successful at Bemm River.
Yeah.
And so work out of it what you like, because there are key components of what I say that are pretty important.
Yep, I understand.
The rest you could toss a coin,
Yep.
I think.
No, it's great.
But it's, for me, I feel privileged to have found Bemm when I was young. I loved it. I used to bring my mates here after footy or after cricket. Some of them used to come here when I was in business here, and we used to have some wonderful times and talk about the old times. But the one feature we had back in the 50s, we didn't catch too many fish. And we would fish and do all the things we did in the Tambo. Didn't work here. So if we can put ourselves in that picture, you realise that, and I think it's wherever you go, if you went to Malakuta or Lake Tyers, you'd say the same. There's little things you've got to learn about the place.
That's
and
exactly
the sooner
right.
you learn those things, and particularly here it's so shallow, when the lake's closed, open, you've really got to watch where you're going.
Well, that's the thing about it. No local here at the moment said, I'll find out for yourself. In places like this, you need to hunt down the locals and have a talk to them. You know, have a talk to your local bait and tackle shop that's in that area, or even here in Bemm River, which your son owns.
Yep.
There's always something. Because the other thing about fishermen, we're braggers. We love to brag about the fish we caught and how to catch them if we can. Right? We are. We're definitely braggers.
Oh, yeah,
There's not a
exactly.
fisherman that I know that doesn't brag about what he's caught. What
Oh,
about
look,
you?
I give a talk to some guys here last year, and one of them said to me, and I had to just back off. He said, have you ever gone out and not caught a fish? And it wasn't that nice a question, because it meant to me that I was presenting myself in a way where I always caught fish, and I didn't want to do that. But you can't help that coming over if you're enthusiastic about your sport, your area. You want people to succeed, and I've done this many times. I've trodden on people's toes because I've pushed. Fishermen want to do their own thing and their way, and that's fine.
Yep.
And some of them will come in because they haven't been successful. They'll listen to you and they'll come back and say, "Look, I'm so thrilled. It's working, and we're catching fish, and thank you very much." But there'll be others that will go away and come back and say, "Oh, I did the opposite to what you did, and I caught fish."
Still caught a fish, yeah.
So we're all different, and that's the way it is.
Well, just before we actually finish off today, Don, it's been great, mate. Absolutely great talking to you. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I've learned, and some of these things I'll even take away to Port Phillip and actually use at
Why
Port
not?
Phillip.
Give it a go.
Because I think that's fishing. Like that's the thing about fishing, is that you can actually take these things away and try them in other areas. But what I like to do is, one of the things that is starting to get a bit dear to my heart, and like over the years, as a mad fisherman, right, we forget about our environment, and it's one area that I'm actually going to try to push through the show is wherever you go fishing, be clean. Pick up your rubbish, right? Pick up your cigarette butts if you're a smoker. Right? Don't leave them there. Cigarette butts don't break down, so it's polluting our waterways and everything like that. Take an empty bottle, find something to put a cigarette butt in. Pick up your cans, pick up your rubbish. Most of the places around, you actually find bins. So you put your rubbish in a bin. And a beautiful, beautiful resort like this, well, resort, town, country town, whatever you want to call it, fishing village, whatever you want to call it, it's a beautiful, clean, lovely place. And as fishermen, we need to leave it like that. Have you ever seen any of those problems here?
Look, it's been a big issue here. When we were able to drive down the river for many years, there was anything up to 50 cars down there every day, all day. So the rubbish was always a big issue. Now, I was involved with the local group here, and we put rubbish bins down there, and unfortunately there's that percentage, and I think everyone's aware of this, that spoil it for the ones that do the right thing. And our bins were thrown in the river, they were vandalised regularly, tipped upside down. So for everyone that tried to bring their bait boxes and their litter and put it away into the bins, there was that one or two who would undo that all. And the same applies over the launching ramp here. Back in the old days when we had poles, blokes would massacre the bush coming down here to get their poles and just leave them laying around at the car park there. So again, stubbies, cans, bait boxes, you wish you could do it in another way, but the way is to educate, and I'm sure the young people today are vastly better educated in regards to rubbish than the older ones. I still think the major issue is with the older ones. They couldn't care less. They take it for granted. I think the younger ones are teaching us a lot in that regard these days.
The younger ones have been taught more environmental issues, and
For sure.
but it's for my grandson, and my grandson's children and everything in the future, that we actually need to keep all our waterways clean. We need to keep them, like as Don said, take your rubbish. We have the same. I've seen the same problem in pier fishing, where the councils have actually supplied rubbish bins, and people have cut them off and thrown them into the.
That's right.
Now we've got to stop these sort of things. I'm not going to go right into it over, but I'll tell you what, Don, this has been absolutely great.
Glad I could be of help.
Oh, mate, it's been so interesting. Just sitting here talking, like we've actually talked.
The stories could go on.
No, I know. We've actually had some personal, like the place we're staying. You come up there the other day and we sat down and talked, and it was interesting. Just the stories and that Don can actually tell you, and that's the great thing about coming to a country town like this and a fishing, a fishing resort or fishing, as I said, village or whatever you want to call it, fishing, is to actually track down. Don, you'll be able to find Don and Bemm River actually on, we'll be on our website. We'll have it linked there that they'll actually.
Angling Club. That's a break. Anglingclub.com. That's our website.
Yeah, Bemm River Angling Club. So we're going to have a link there, and you'll be able to log on to that and have a look to see what reports you do, reports and all that.
Yeah, look, I do mainly on the website.
Yep.
Don's blog. Anything. We've had some big issues here with the new pontoon that's been proposed, and we've got big issues with that. And talking about the environment, that's another side to this estuary. It's quite a unique estuary. There is no estuary that's anything like the Sydenham Inlet. So we unfortunately the powers that be haven't got a good understanding of how it behaves and how it works. So we really are having difficulties with the infrastructure that's being introduced here, and at this moment we're trying to point the powers that be in the right direction, but it's a very big task, and I'm not confident about the result, because that access point we have over there is it. If it's out of commission, we can't get into the estuary. So
there's no estuary,
that's right. And so if the inappropriate infrastructure is put into that area, which I'm worried about at the moment, it could give us a lot of grief in not too many years to come. So
right.
It is a big issue, and we're on the precipice, as it were. And unfortunately, the sort of people that are behind these projects haven't got a proper understanding of what's involved. And if you look at the fishing platform, the Angling Club got the funds for that as an angling club. We were granted those funds for that, and so we had major input into where it was located and the style of the facility. And originally it was proposed as a pontoon, and we convinced the authorities then that a pontoon wasn't appropriate for that region. Whilst it's got a lot of very good features, it creates a wall and traps the weed, which is an abundance of, and would effectively be counterproductive had it been a pontoon. So anyone that can see it now, it looks a bit, out of its leg a bit. It's very leggy, because being open like it is, you've only got about the amount of water, but that's enough to catch a bream in the morning or evening.
Yep.
But once the lake closes, well, of course, it gets to be a really good focus, and for anyone, and there's been plenty have had some wonderful success there.
Yep, I understand what you mean.
And again, the same applies. Every decision that's made here, the environment has got to be right up there in its consideration.
Absolutely.
And we're not quite getting that with the authorities at this stage, unfortunately.
Well, people will be able to read about that on your
yes,
website.
I've put many letters. Most Angling Club members will be aware of what my concerns are, and my concerns are basically on the basis of the 60 years that I've been coming to Bemm.
Right.
It's not just come in today and look at it and say, oh yeah, it's this, and it looks a bit like some place in Marlow or Malakuta or Lake Ties, and that's what we do. That doesn't work, and unfortunately the people that I'm dealing with, they're inclined to be comparing us with other areas with similar infrastructure, and they don't understand that it's inappropriate for us.
Well, Bemm River to me seems like a unique place itself. Like every place is a unique place. Everyone's
It is. They are, of course they are. I'd never take that away.
Yeah.
People that love Malakuta are never going to be happy at Bemm River.
That's right.
And that doesn't make them bad people.
No.
We've got different needs. We respond to different features, and we're all different. So I accept that, but I say Bemm is special for those people that have found Bemm and feel good here, because they're the ones we cater for. They spend money in the town, they support the hotel and all the accommodation and the shop. Without that support, Bemm wouldn't have very much.
Well, it must have something, because people have been coming back here on and off.
Well, do you remember the old Louis Richards and Jack Dyer days?
Oh, yes.
Jack, we used to sell him a bit of bait. The hotel was the major focus for old Jack those days, but he had this big American car, and he used to drive down, and this particular day he's bought a box of sandworm off Dyer, and Dyer said, you can't believe how big his hands is. She said, he put it on, and she said, you could still see his fingers and thumbs. He had such a big hand. But either we have a long counter lunch here at the pub, and then about 2:30 he'd drive down, and the big American car would thump in the old fence lines that were there. You could hear him coming from over there. Here comes Jack!
That's what I'm saying.
What a story.
Yeah. But the whole thing about it, Bemm River's got a history, and it's been here since, as you said, before the war, back into the 20s and 30s.
1936 was netted up until then.
Yep.
From 1917, when the trains started at Orbost, the professional fishermen, so from 1917 to 1936 they netted this estuary for a season. So 1936 there was a few people here got together, and they went to the minister at the time, who agreed, and they banned the fishing in the workers.
So in 1936 it turned into a
1936.
it turned into a
There was
fishing
a little
village?
snippet in the one of the, might have been the Herald Sun or one of the Melbourne papers. 13 professional fishermen have been banned from fishing in the estuary. It's in the middle.
Right. So, like I said, since 1936 to now, this has been a fishing haven.
Well, that's Bemm River. We've had a bit of fun. And it's home time back to lovely downtown Melbourne. Alright, so goodbye, Bemm River.